Even though Paramount is much smaller than Warner Brothers, you know who's got much more money than either? Paramount's CEO's dad.
Netflix sort of realized that given the hostility from the Trump administration that the deal wasn't going to go through anyway.
So Netflix is like, haha, you're overpaying for Warner Brothers and you're paying us $2.8 billion. Hee hee, we're just like laughing all the way to the bank. Except the vibe is that this is a loss for Netflix and not a win for them.
Paramount Plus desperately needs to get bigger, needs HBO way more, but hanging over all of this is the politics.
That was probably the moment where Strandos just thought we should not be doing this.
It gave Netflix the ick.
Hello and welcome to Slate Money, your guide to the business and finance news of the week. I'm Felix Salmon of Bloomberg. I'm here with Elizabeth Spiers of the New York Times.
Hello.
I'm here with Emily Peck of Axios.
Hello, hello.
And we have a cat. Emily, can you introduce your cat?
It's Fitz. Fitz the cat. He's a year old. He just jumped down. He doesn't want to be on camera.
I mean, this is what YouTube is for, right? It's for cat videos. In the background of the cat video, we are going to talk about the bidding war over Warner Brothers Discovery, which we thought was going to be owned by Netflix and is now, it turns out it's not going to be owned by Netflix, it's going to be owned by Paramount and the Ellisons. So that is one of our segments on the main podcast, but it is what you are going to get here on YouTube. So enjoy. This is a fun little M&A story, or fun
Big M&A story.
$111 billion M&A story.
Huge.
A tale as old as time, which is there's this company that seemed big when it was formed through some merger or other, but then it tried to make it on its own in the big wide world and decided it wasn't big enough and it needed to get bought by someone even bigger. This little engine that could is known as Warner Brothers Discovery, and it tried to make it on its own, decided it wasn't big enough, put itself up for sale, found a bigger company in the form of Netflix who said, I will eat you and I will pay you $100 billion or something to eat you. And they said, great. And they did the deal, but there was an underbidder. The underbidder is this much, much smaller company called Paramount. And Paramount doesn't really have the money to buy Warner Brothers. And the heads of Paramount and Warner Brothers don't really like each other very much. And so everyone was kind of relieved when Warner Brothers just, when it turned out that the Netflix bid was higher than the Paramount bid. And so everyone was like, okay, fine, it's going to Netflix. That makes sense. But then it turns out that even though Paramount is much smaller than Warner Brothers, who's got much more money than either is Paramount's CEO's dad. This is the world we live in, where one guy can have more money than this entire company. Paramount CEO's dad is this guy, Larry Ellison. We've talked about him many times. He's worth hundreds of billions of dollars. He and his son got together and said, well, yeah, the thing is that Paramount, which is even smaller than Warner Brothers, if Warner Brothers is too small to make it, Paramount is way too small to make it. So we're going to need to buy Warner Brothers, otherwise we are going to just die. Our bid of $30 was rejected by Warner Brothers board as not being enough. And then this is the bit which absolutely astonishes me. They're like, hey, $30 was less than the Netflix bid. $30 was not enough. That Netflix bid is signed. We need to sweeten the deal. If we want to make it, if we want to come back with a new bid, we need to do a knockout bid that is going to persuade the board of Warner Brothers to tear up the existing deal and say, screw you, Netflix, we're going with Paramount. They are finally giving us a much, much better deal. And so you know what Paramount did? They came back and they said, we're not going to give you $30. We're going to give you, wait for it, drum roll, $31.
But Felix, there was other stuff.
And there's other stuff. But amazingly, the minute I saw that bid of we have sweetened our bid from $30 to $31, because they'd already thrown in the other stuff on top of the $30 bid, and that hadn't moved the needle enough. The final thing they did that moved the needle was raise their bid from 30 to 31, and somehow that actually worked. And I was like, wow.
It worked for a couple of reasons. One is that I think Netflix sort of realized that given the hostility from the Trump administration, that the deal wasn't going to go through anyway. And Sarandos always said that, he wanted the company at the right price, but not any price. So it's possible that they were just bumping up whatever against whatever Sarandos's reserve price was.
So Ted Sarandos, to be clear, was the CEO of Netflix. And yeah, I think the fact that Netflix wasn't going to go any higher was a relatively predictable part of this. Even so, okay, so here's a question for you, Elizabeth. Netflix, on the face of it, comes out of this looking pretty good on the strength of, number one, it has forced its competitor, Paramount, to pay more than it wanted to pay for this asset. And number two, it is getting $2.8 billion from Paramount as a breakup fee. So Netflix is like, haha, you're overpaying for Warner Brothers and you're paying us $2.8 billion. Hee hee, we're just like laughing all the way to the bank. Except, like, somehow the vibe around Netflix is that this is a loss for Netflix and not a win for them.
I think that's because there was a perception that Netflix pursuing the deal in the first place was a sign that it was that there were weaknesses there and that they felt like they had to make the acquisition in order to shore up certain parts of the business. And so that now it's the people who thought that already are just probably feeling validated.
I don't think that's the right interpretation.
So what do you think?
Netflix is like coming out the loser somehow. I mean, you can see simply in the stock, which is up, as we're talking, like 8% for the week. People were just relieved that Netflix wasn't embroiling itself in this like Paramount drama. And by saying like, okay, you want to pay that price? Congratulations on saying the most dollars, just like Logan Roy said in Succession. Like, Netflix is the streaming winner, definitely. Paramount Plus, desperate, just like you said, Felix, desperate to get bigger, desperately needs to get bigger, needs HBO way more. Paramount Plus, like, for all the attention its little shows get, like Yellowstone or whatever, no one really respects it the way they respect HBO and the other, programming that's coming from Warner Brothers Discovery. Like, they're so thirsty for this company. I think they come off probably paying too much. Netflix dodged a bullet, didn't need to do this, just like they said. And maybe like the biggest winner of all is our buddy David Zaslav, who once again like comes out with tons of money, is looking pretty sharp for all of the wrangling here. And I think it's like very TBD if Paramount looks good in a year,
This reminds me a little bit of when Steve Schwartzman bought the terminal bit of Thomson Reuters and then owned it for like 5 minutes before turning around and flipping it to LSE Group for a massive profit. And I'm like, this is kind of what Zaslav did with Warner Brothers. He was running this tiny little cable company called Discovery. He bought a much, much bigger company called Warner Brothers, right? Like that was the first crazy thing. Is this minnow called Discovery buys this massive studio, Warner Brothers. He holds on to it for 5 minutes, struggles through as an independent company, like tries to make a pretense that he can make it work as an independent company, but it rapidly becomes obvious that he doesn't, and then turns around and sells it for a massive profit. And you're like, that was a good deal,
David
Zaslav. Yeah.
So he's done it again.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out, though, because Warner Brothers Discovery is a very top-heavy company in terms of C-level officers. There are like 12 CEOs who are accustomed to having a direct line to Zaslav, and now you combine that with the people that Ellison's already managing. It feels like there could be a big clash of cultures and, working out the hierarchy there.
Oh, definitely. And expect a bunch of senior level heads to roll, for sure.
But hanging over all of this is the politics. Like, that's like a big thing that happened here, right?
Yes. So Paramount... Emily, can you tell me about this Susan Rice thing? Because that confuses the fuck out of me.
I mean, Susan Rice, former official in the Obama administration, national security official, is on the board of Netflix and has said some things, political things.
She said people shouldn't capitulate to Trump.
Thank you.
And she sort of said it in a general way, but it got back to Trump and he lost his mind.
So he said Ted Sarandos, needs to fire her, just showing like the administration's clearly in the bag for Paramount. I feel like that's not a controversial thing to say at this point. And Paramount leveraged that perception and reality in its deal making. There's like some provisions in the bid it made that if the deal takes longer than a certain amount of time to go through, they start paying like some ticking fee or something, like 25 cents a share. Like they use that political oomph to sort of like make their bid look better, I think. And I think that helped. And then just the general perception from Netflix's end, like the dawning realization of just how like, you know, just how like dicey the whole situation is going to make them even more want to walk away from this thing. That's what it seems like to me.
My hot take when it comes to this whole thing, when it comes to antitrust, is that, yeah, I mean, given how politicized antitrust enforcement has obviously become in the Trump regime, I do think there was a non-trivial chance that Netflix would have run into antitrust scrutiny by the DOJ. But at the same time, just objectively speaking, neither of these combinations is big enough to be a antitrust, real thing. There's still plenty of streamers. There's still plenty of competition. Warner Brothers is not big enough that if it's owned by Paramount or if it's owned by Netflix, it's going to, move the needle too much in any direction.
Also, I mean, we didn't really talk about this, I think, while you were gone last week. The woman at DOJ who everyone liked, who was in charge of antitrust, like the Jonathan Cantor of it's not really fair to say that, but the antitrust woman at the DOJ that had bipartisan support, and people were like, it's Trump antitrust. And she was like, I'm MAGA antitrust, and I'm going to protect you from big whatever. Like, she really didn't do any protecting from big whatever during her tenure and got a lot of pushback from lobbyists. And the DOJ hasn't really done anything to stop any deal. So it's kind of interesting to think about that also, like, okay, maybe the politics was wonky for Netflix, but like the DOJ doesn't seem to have any appetite to stop any deal actually. So like maybe it would have been fine. I don't know. I'm like countering my own point, but that's something I was thinking about.
Also, I think any facial policy that the Trump administration has around antitrust or anything else is always subject to revision based on Trump's personal enmities. It did feel like a turning point when he got really mad about Susan Rice. Yeah. And I think that was probably the moment where Sarandos just thought, we should not be doing this.
It gave Netflix the ick, as the kids say.
Yeah, don't try and get into negotiations with the Trump regime as Anthropic is currently learning.
Oh, I wish we were talking about that too. That's so interesting.
Yeah, that is a wild story, which
maybe we could talk about it next week.
We will talk about that next week when we know how it ends, because we are recording this on Friday. The big deadline is Friday afternoon, and then it will work out one way or the other, and then we will have a topic to talk about next week. It's always good.
Someone write it down. We will definitely forget.
Hey there. I want to tell you about The Slatest, which is Slate's daily newsletter that lands in your inbox every evening. It's written by Slate's editor-in-chief, Hilary Fry, and it is the perfect way to end your day a little smarter than you began it. Every issue pulls together the sharpest stories, the most surprising news, and the can't-miss Slate podcasts, including this one, plus smart analysis and a bit of well-earned distraction. From DC to Hollywood to the algorithm, The Slatest keeps you clued in to the world and to Slate. You can sign up right now at slate.com/theslatest.